And welcome into In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports. Hey there, I'm Aaron Cheslock. Want to give one more thank you to Gamecocks football coach Shane Beamer for joining us in the first episode and certainly starting this thing off with a bang. The second episode does not disappoint at all. The one and only Clemson baseball coach Monte Lee joining us here. Coach, first of all, how you doing? Is this the most normal you've felt in the last calendar year?
Well, I'm doing great. Get a chance to be on the field every day, and in anticipation for a great season. Just we're 2 weeks away from being able to see somebody else in the dugout. It's been quite some time coming with our season ending mid-March last year. It's been almost a year since we've had a competition. So I think we're just very excited about the opportunity to play again. And every day it's been awesome. Just having the guys back, getting back into the swing of things. We're now 2 weekends of inter squads in, so we've had a chance to play 8 inter squads total. So I feel like our rhythm is getting there. I think we're pretty close to being season ready. We've got a few questions to answer still on weekend rotation. Some bullpen roles, a couple lineup spots that I think are still up for grabs. So there's still some competition going on. Got to get some guys healthy. We're a little banged up, more banged up right now, position player wise than I would have liked. But we hope to get a few of those guys back maybe by this weekend. But all in all, it's been great. Just excited again about opening day coming up and playing a great Cincinnati club and getting after it. So, pretty pumped about it.
Before we touch on the 21 season, it'd be irresponsible to not circle back to 2020 and just get your thoughts on it now that it's in the rearview mirror. You guys had a 14-3 start. You looked, it looks like a typical Clemson baseball team, going to be right there in the mix at the end of the whole thing. But then the season gets suspended. It then gets cut short. All your years in a dugout, was that the hardest team meeting you've ever had to have?
Certainly was one of the hardest moments of my life as a coach, quite honestly, just because I think as coaches, we like to understand how we're going to handle situations. And a lot of times experience takes care of that. Once you go through something for the first time as a coach, you have that experience if it happens again, whether it's a long winning streak, a long losing streak, things of that nature, injuries, failures, whatever the case may be. You've been there and you've done that. The more experienced you are as a coach, there was certainly no playbook for this. So it was more of a shock, I think, than anything to play Winthrop on a Wednesday night, win an extra innings, and then the next day, literally the next day, your season was canceled. It went from, basically a 2-week suspension of the season to 2 hours later, the season's over. And I think that was the hardest thing, was just, how do I handle this? How do I manage this? We have one team meeting where we're telling the guys, look, guys, we're going to shut the season down for a couple of weeks. We're going to continue to train, keep you guys in shape and ready to go when they tell us we can return to competition. To now, our season is over. So that was the biggest challenge. And then just the unknowns of what would that team have went on to accomplish. We were 14-3, like you said. We had just come off sweeping Boston College. We had come off a huge series win over South Carolina. We had won 6 one-run games, so we were able to compete in close ball games. It was a tough group of kids. So we just felt like we had something special. And just to see it end like that was a very, very difficult pill to swallow. And then when we came back in August, late August, with our guys, it was trying to get them acclimated to life with COVID in this environment. It was a challenge as well, not using the locker room, not doing team meals, wearing a mask in the dugout, spreading out, no team meetings. Just players right now need connection, I think, more than ever. and with the restrictions that we have, it makes connection as a coach and as a team very, very challenging. So we're just doing the best that we can. And I think that's the main thing. The bright side is we got a full fall in of team practice. We've been able to get on the field every day. The weather has cooperated with us for the most part. And it's a great group of kids. So there's a lot to be thankful for and appreciate. And I think that having the season end the way it did last year, it just gives you a little bit different perspective on just how valuable interaction and connection with your players is as a coach. That perspective has been very, very good for me, I think, as a coach. And I think we care about each other a little bit more than we did in the past. It just means a little bit more to wear that uniform together day in, day out and go through the journey together. It just means a little bit more. So we're excited about what the future holds, but we know that, we could be faced with a lot of challenges in the future too. If we have, a couple players test positive, what that can do and how we're going to handle that. And we're still dealing with a lot of restrictions as well that we have to make sure that we're following. So it's still challenging, but it's exciting on the other side as well, just being able to get our season started.
You approach it a little more cautiously than you have in the past. I mean, you've seen other sports go through hiccups and get the season in. But just the fact that it was during your season last year when the entire thing started and it stopped on a dime, you're back on the field, you're practicing, everything is full steam ahead. But as you mentioned, it's so unpredictable right now, in particular with the sports world. Is there just that little piece in the back of your head? It's like, okay, it's almost hope as well as preparation.
Well, you're cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it. And we saw that in the fall. I mean, we dealt with the virus in the fall. And literally, when those days where we have everybody tested and when those results start popping up on your phone in the afternoon, you've got to deal with that as a coach in a hurry if you have some positive tests. And the adjustments that you have to make are literally like that. And it's, hey, we've got these guys out of practice. These guys have to go home. These are the direct contacts. This is how we have to reshuffle the lineups and the practice plans and everything. And it's challenging. It's super challenging, but you just have to understand that it's going to happen, that you're going to get punched in the face with this thing, and you better be able to deal with it. You better have a plan when you get punched in the face with COVID. So that's always in the back of my mind. And knock on wood, we've been pretty dang good so far at being able to stay away from it, but we know it's coming. And it's just a matter of when, and we have to be prepared to deal with it when it happens. So you're exactly right. I think cautiously optimistic is probably the right word for it. So we just have to be willing to deal with it when it happens and have our players understand that, hey, guys, you're going to have to adjust on the fly with this thing. You may be asked to play a different position because we just lost a guy to COVID. You may be asked to start and you're a reliever. You may be asked to pitch out of the bullpen if you're a starter. You may be asked to do some things that you're not necessarily ready for or comfortable with, but you just have to make the adjustment for the team in the environment that we're dealing with. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll be able to get through the season with as few of hiccups as possible, but we'll deal with it when it happens.
We appreciate you giving us some insight into there. It's, into your mind, it's one of the things that a lot of us on the outside of these programs are curious about. And, I certainly can sympathize with you that it's not something in a coaching handbook anywhere. And I don't think anyone had any time to prepare, and we'll see how it goes. Hoping for the best there. Now, usually the whole point of this podcast is that we get to know you off the field, but it would be irresponsible and not talk a little bit of ball here. And when you look at this Clemson team coming back in 2021, you got some talent on offense coming back. Guys like Bryce Teodosio, Sam Hall. Kier Meredith's back. So, there's a lot of optimism with the lineup, but I know there's a lot of optimism with the pitching staff as well, which is I'm a little curious about, because you're losing guys like Spencer Strider and Sam Weatherly, Carson Spires out of the back end. That's a lot of arms and a lot of talented arms that are out the door. Tell us a little bit about these the pitching staff and the lineup as we sit right now.
Well, it's a great question, and I think it's still that's the biggest question that I have. The same questions that our fan base has is the same questions that I have. Is when you lose a guy like a Weatherly, who is a true Friday night starter, a true ace of the staff, immediately you think, okay, who has the ability to step in that role and do what he did? Spencer Strider was pitching on Sundays for us. Incredibly talented arm going on Sundays in Strider. And then you have Carson Spires, arguably one of the best relievers to pitch at Clemson. I mean, he did an unbelievable job for us and was well on his way to being an All-American last year when the season ended. So we return a lot, but what we lost was pretty dang good. So the thing that we have is experience on the pitching side when it comes to starting pitching. We have several guys who have made a lot of starts for us. Davis Sharp obviously comes to mind. He's the most experienced. He's pitched in the most big games for us. We also have Matt Clark back this year. Matt Clark has made a lot of starts in a Clemson baseball uniform. Keyshawn Askew has made a lot of starts in a Clemson baseball uniform. We have a newcomer to the program in Caden Grice, who has all the makings of being a superstar. He's 6'6", 240, low 90s fastball, breaking ball changeup, has as much raw power potential as any player we've ever had at the plate. So this guy is a legitimate two-way player, and we expect big things out of Caden. So he's in that mix as well. And that's kind of the mix right now as far as starting. But there's a lot of other names that I could add to that list that we feel like are going to be big guys for us. Evan Estridge, I expect a big year from. Ty Olenchuk, true freshman out of Dutch Fork, big-time competitor with a big arm, is going to be a factor. Carter Raffield, big arm, is going to be a factor. Mac Anglin is better than I've ever seen him. He's going to be a factor. We actually feel like our bullpen is our strength. It was a strength for us last year, which is why we won so many one-run games. And it's going to be a strength for us this year, I believe. And I think we've got a guy in Jeffrey Gilbert who's just as good as Carson Spires at the end of the game. So we feel like our pen is a strength. The big thing that's going to have to happen for us is guys like Davis, guys like Matt Clark, Keyshawn Askew, and Caden Grice. They're going to have to be able to get through a lineup twice, and then we turn it over to our strength, which is our pen. I think innings 6 through 9, we could be in really good shape for what we can do on the mound. Lineup-wise, it's an experienced lineup. There's quite a few guys who have stood out that are newcomers. Jonathan French is a name that people need to get familiar with. He's a catcher, tremendous power and plate discipline, middle of the order type bat. Caden Grice, I've already mentioned. We've played 8 games. He's hit 7 home runs in 8 games. He's raw. He's still developing, but when he touches it with the bat, if it's hit in the air, every ball he's hit in the air is left a park except for one in an inner squad. So it's impressive to watch. We have a young man in Alex Urban who's hit, I think, 3 home runs in 8 games as well, left-handed hitter out of the Columbia area. Blake Wright is a newcomer out of Florida. He's been playing third base for us. He looks to be a future star here. He's well ahead of many, many infielders that we have had come through this program as a true freshman with the bat. The bat is real, and I think he's going to be a really good player for us. So we've got some newcomers in that mix, but we've got the James Parkers, Elijah Hendersons, Bryce Teodosio, Sam Hall, Kier Meredith, Dylan Brewer. We've got a lot of experience. Adam Hackenberg. You know, Hack is hurt right now. So he's going to be out for the first what could be few weeks of the season. But when he comes back, I mean, he's the team captain, and he's as good as any catcher in the country. We just got to get him healthy and get him back. But we got another young man in Cooper Ingle who's going to be a really good player for us, left-handed hitter who catches, can play the outfield. He hit 360 this fall with a 500 on base percentage. I mean, so we have some options offensively. The big questions for us are going to be who's going to take the ball Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and get us through a lineup twice to turn it over to that bullpen. Because if we find the right recipe there, I think we have a chance to have a really good club.
Now, I said this the other day on the radio. It's the last question I have for you on the field. But, working in the upstate, we know about Caden Grice. We saw what he did over at Riverside. And it was tough for me because I'm not a scout to gauge how that kind of raw talent translates to D1 baseball, and certainly in a conference like the ACC and a team like Clemson. But to hear you rave about him, when you have a guy like Davis Sharp and a guy like Caden Grice, it's rare to have one of those guys that are as good of a pitcher to start on the weekend, but also middle of the lineup hitter. You could have two this season. Is that maybe the most underrated benefit in all of college baseball?
Well, it certainly helps, that's for sure. When you've got a guy, we were actually in a staff meeting this morning before this, just talking about how are we going to manage this? Because that's a big factor. You know, you talk about Davis Sharp, who's also a very good hitter as well. I could see a scenario where when Sharp pitches, Grice plays first. When Grice pitches, Sharp plays first. I could see scenarios where if Sharp is pitching, he may slide into the DH spot when he comes out of the game. We wouldn't have to hit him while he pitches. Same thing with Caden. If we choose not to do that, if we want them to just focus on pitching that day because it's their day to start, we can slide them into the DH spot. The other guy can play first base. So you have some, I think the main thing is it gives you options. It gives you options at first base. It gives you options at DH. And certainly gives you options on the mound. So it's really trying to put those pieces of the puzzle together. But I think the bigger factor for that is we may never, I will probably never coach a team that has two guys in it that are legitimate two-way guys. Usually when you have a two-way guy, he's more of one or the other. He's either more of a pitcher than he is a hitter or more of a hitter than he is a pitcher. Very, very difficult to be elite at both at this level. These two guys certainly have a chance to be elite at both.
All right, let's touch a little bit on Monte Lee, the man.
Okay.
You are a Spartanburg native, but you went to high school, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right, Lugoff Elgin High?
That's correct.
Just northeast of Columbia. How long did you live in the upstate for before you moved over there?
So I was born in the upstate, was born in a small town outside of Spartanburg. Packlet, South Carolina is where all my family's from. My mother and my father's side of the family, they all are from there. So I was born there. And my dad worked in textiles like a lot of men in the upstate in the Spartanburg and Greenville area. He got an opportunity when I was in first grade. I was 6 years old. He got an opportunity to run a textile plant in Camden, South Carolina. So we moved when I was in the first grade to Lugoff, which is right beside Camden, and that's where I grew up. So, the Spartanburg area is home to me because that's where all my family is from. My mother still lives there. She moved back there. But I grew up in Lugoff. So all my friends that I went to school with growing up there, obviously a lot of them are still there. So I kind of have two homes, so to speak. But I don't have any family in the Lugoff area. All my family lives in the Spartanburg area.
Now, for the folks younger than me, might not know how good Monte Lee the player was, but you certainly stood out when you stepped on a baseball diamond. Were you ever recruited by Clemson when Jack Leggett was there?
I was not. I was not recruited by Clemson. In fact, I was really a late bloomer as a player. I was a two-way player. I was a left-handed pitcher, outfielder, and I really I was always a good baseball player, but being a 3-sport guy growing up, I think I developed a little bit later as a baseball player, and really kind of came into my own as a junior in high school. And back then, recruiting wasn't as early as it is now. You didn't get recruited really till your senior year, the spring of your senior year. So had a really good senior year, started to get some interest from several schools. And the College of Charleston offered me a scholarship late in my senior year. I went down there and visited and fell in love with the place and decided that that's where I wanted to go to school and play baseball, and chose to go there. But no, I wasn't recruited by Clemson or South Carolina. And quite honestly, back then in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, there really weren't a lot of kids from the state of South Carolina that played in the programs. If you look at, during that era, there weren't a lot of guys from South Carolina playing at Clemson or at the University of South Carolina at the time. So I wasn't recruited by either. But I'm glad that I went to school where I went to school, because the College of Charleston gave me a chance to play every day for 4 years. And that really helped me develop as a player, and was later drafted. I was drafted as a senior at the College of Charleston, went on to play for a couple years in the minor leagues, and then I got into coaching.
Well, you're selling yourself short there. Not only did you play for 4 years, let me bring him up right here. He hit .333 in 206 career games, top 10 in school history in doubles, total bases, and RBIs. That's making the most of the opportunity right there. So the Cardinals draft you, and you play 2 years in the minors. What was that experience like? Minor league ball.
Well, it was a great experience for me because I knew that I always wanted to coach. So I was a realistic player. I knew that even going into my time as a professional, that it may not last very long. So I need to make the most of it. And every kid has a dream of playing in the big leagues. And I certainly felt like, hey, I can play in the big leagues. I have the ability to play in the big leagues. Well, it's a pretty humbling experience once you get into the professional baseball ranks and you're playing with guys who are top 3 round draft pick type players. You start to realize pretty quick where you fit. And I knew that in the back of my mind that I always wanted to coach. I was an education major at the College of Charleston and wanted to get into coaching. So the pro side of things, I always would look at the itinerary that the manager would put up for pregame fundamental work and study it. And I would even pull it off at the end of the day and keep it, because I knew that one day I wanted to coach. And it's funny, the best experience I ever had as a player that helped me in coaching, I got sent to extended spring training in 2000. I'd been released by the Cardinals. 3 days later, I signed with the Rangers as a free agent because they needed an extra outfielder in extended spring training. Well, when you go to extended spring training, that means you did not make a full season club. And I was down there when there was about 40 guys down there. 5 of us spoke English. And I was the oldest one. So when you do baseball at 8:30 in the morning till 12, eat lunch, and then play a 9-inning game at 1, and then you lift weights at 5 o'clock, and you do that 6 days a week for 8 weeks, you learn just how much you love baseball real quick, especially when you can't communicate with most of your teammates. That was a challenge as well. So it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about the game, and it helped prepare me. And a lot of the things that I do in practice are things that I learned in my professional career. So it gave me an opportunity to spend time with folks from other countries, from other parts of the world. I think it helped develop me a little bit as a coach, made me a little more well-rounded. And then I got into coaching, and, in 2001 came back to Spartanburg and coached the Spartanburg Methodist. That's where it all started for me. So, I had a great playing career. But, quite honestly, as soon as I got into coaching, the main focus for me at that time was just coach players the way that you would want to be coached, and treat people the way that you would want to be treated, and make sure that your players every day look forward to coming to the field. I think that's always stuck with me and has been a big point of emphasis for me for 20 plus years now.
Well, you started answering the next question right there. You don't take a break after you're done playing. You go right to Spartanburg Methodist. Then it's over to South Carolina as assistant coach for a few years. Then you get your first head coaching gig at CFC. It's a pretty quick road to being a head coach. You certainly put the work in. What were the nerves like when you first got to get your own program there?
Well, that was just an interesting time. It was a very special time. It's funny. You asking me that question kind of takes me back. I was 31 at the time, so I was the youngest Division I head coach in the country when I got the job, and I was also very, very inexperienced and felt like I don't know, for the first 3 months on the job. I don't know if I went to bed any earlier than probably midnight or 1 a.m. and I would get to work at 7 a.m. and literally all I did was recruit, because I knew right at the beginning of my time at the College of Charleston that for us to be what I wanted us to be, we had to get players in there. And it was like the first 3 months was just a whirlwind. It was overwhelming. Once we started practice, it was still overwhelming, just running a program for the first time. And it was a humbling experience because I can remember as an assistant for 8 years, kind of sitting back and evaluating other head coaches. Now, I was fortunate. I worked for Tim Wallace, Hall of Famer, Ray Tanner, Hall of Famer. So I got to learn from the best. But as a young guy thinking, you know what, when I become a head coach, here's how I may do it differently, right? When you become a head coach, you realize real fast, I probably should do a lot of things just like those two guys, because once you're actually in those situations, you realize, man, I'm talking just like Coach Tanner here, or I'm talking just like Tim Wallace here. And you realize real fast just how important the people along the way are. And as I've gotten older, I think that's been the biggest thing is not being too overwhelmed, because now I have that experience, behind me. But I can remember Dan McDonald. I had a conversation with Dan McDonald when I got the job at the College of Charleston about how do I handle the first month on the job? And he just started laughing. He said, you're going to remember the first 3 months on the job as some of the best times of your life as a coach, because of just how much you're going to go through and how much it's going to help you for your next job. And he was so right. I felt like when I came to Clemson, I was much, much more prepared for the first 3 months, having gone through it at the College of Charleston.
When you think about the opportunity to coach at Clemson, the fact that you're from the upstate, that you've been in South Carolina, for the majority of your life, does it mean more to you than it would another coach coming in from out of state, knowing the programs and the fan bases, certainly with Clemson and SC, the fan bases are as devoted as there are in the country. The program is, one of the best in the country. But so while many coaches would like to have your job, I would imagine it means a little bit more to a guy like you.
Well, I can't speak, I can't say that it means more to me than anybody else or to somebody that doesn't have my background. But all I can do is speak for myself. I'm from South Carolina. I've lived here my whole life. Everybody in my family is from South Carolina, and most of them still live here. This state means a lot to me. The people of South Carolina mean a lot to me, because it's where I'm from, it's where I live, and it's where I hope to live for the rest of my life. So to say that it means something to me is an understatement. It's literally a dream come true. I've been living a dream come true my whole life. I mean, just being able to coach at Spartanburg Methodist, South Carolina, and College of Charleston and Clemson. All my coaching stops have been in South Carolina too. I don't take that for granted. I'm blessed, I'm fortunate, and I love every day that I get a chance to do what I do in my home state and coaching at a university like Clemson University. And you're right, Aaron. I mean, when you grow up in South Carolina, you just know that, Clemson and South Carolina, those are the two biggest sports entities in our state. That's who people, everybody watches Clemson in South Carolina, football, basketball, baseball, soccer, volleyball, et cetera, et cetera. There's no pro sports in South Carolina. So it means a lot to the people of our state, and I'm one of those people. Hopefully I answered that. I don't know if it means more, but it certainly means an awful lot to me.
Well, you certainly had a ton of success since you started at Clemson. You're going into your 6th year here. NCAA tournament berths in the first 4 years. Obviously, last year it is what it is. Where is the next rung on the ladder for Clemson baseball? While you've had a ton of success, you are certainly a goal-driven coach. Where do you see Clemson baseball over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we want to be Team 13. I think it's really that simple. We talked to our team this year about it an awful lot. We don't run from expectations. We don't run from it. We embrace it, and we all know here what the expectations are. There's been 12 teams that have made it to Omaha, and I want to coach the 13th team that goes to Omaha whenever that is. We certainly hope it's this year. So it's really that simple. I've been a head coach now. I think this is year 13. So 7 years at CFC, and this is my 6th year at Clemson. And obviously we have the asterisks beside last year. But that's one thing that I don't have on my coaching resume as a head coach. I've been to Omaha as an assistant coach. I've been to Grand Junction, the Junior College World Series, as an assistant coach. I've never been to Omaha as a head coach, and I want to take a team there, and we certainly hope that it's sooner than later. And we all know the expectations here. The expectations are a given, and we embrace them. So over the next 3 to 5 years, that's going to be our expectations every year, is to put a team on the field that can compete in Omaha.
Who's your favorite baseball player of all time?
Oh, man. Well, I have several that come to mind, but my childhood hero was Dale Murphy. So I grew up a diehard Braves fan. Everybody in my family watched the Braves every single night. I grew up a Braves fan when they were not very good. And Murph was the best player on the field. Obviously loved Chipper Jones as they transitioned into the early 90s. I got a chance to grow up with those teams as well in high school and into college. And but Dale Murphy, when I was a little kid, I would wiggle the bat at the plate just like he did. And he was actually our keynote speaker at my first baseball banquet, Clemson baseball banquet here back in 2016. So I actually got a chance to meet him, and just a humble man, great man, family man, and a great baseball player. So he was my childhood hero, like probably a lot of 40-plus-year-old guys that grew up pulling for the Braves.
When you tell your players to watch this guy's tape, you want to know how to play the game correctly, go YouTube this guy. Who do you tell them?
Well, I think if I wanted to tell a college baseball player to watch this guy because of how he plays the game or played the game, it's very hard to beat Dustin Pedroia. I'm a huge Pedroia fan because he was a guy that won world championships, was an MVP, and he was not physically as talented as anybody else on the field. I mean, you look at when he played in Boston, every player on the field had more physical gifts than he did, and everybody in the other dugout did as well. And he was probably the best baseball player on the field. Tough as nails, blue collar, hard nosed, and maximized his ability. He would be the guy that I would say stands out. I mean, I had this discussion with a friend of mine the other day. Pedro played 14 years in the big leagues and may not be a Hall of Famer because of his overall career numbers, but his career probably was cut short due to injuries because he played so hard. He played so hard for his teams to help them win that it probably cut his career short. But he would be a guy that stands out to me that kids should watch play and try to replicate the way that he played the game because he played so dang hard.
There's probably some, as we get set to wrap up here, there's probably some folks watching this, listening to this, that have aspirations of their own. Maybe they're in high school and college, play ball, that they might want to go into coaching one day as well. What would be the advice you give them, the thing that maybe they can't hear from anyone besides a guy that sits in your seat, and maybe something you'd warn them against that you wish you'd have done differently?
Well, the one thing that I'm proud of myself for doing is that I just tried to do the very best job that I could do where my feet were at the time. I think that's a big key in coaching and in corporate America. Whatever it is that you pursue, it's not about trying to do a good job where you're at to get the next job. My focus was always just do the very best job I could do with the role that I had, and then let the chips fall where they may. And the fact that I got a chance to coach baseball every day because I love coaching baseball, not because I felt like I was any better at it than anybody else. I think that's been a big key for me, is just coaching because I have a passion for coaching and just trying to do the very best job that I can do where I'm at, instead of coaching because I'm good at it or I'm talented at it, or I don't look at it that way. I coach because I love to coach. And wherever my feet are, I try to be great at it. I just want to be the very best I can be. If I'm recruiting that day, if I'm coaching base running, outfield play, defense, hitting, whatever the case may be, just try to do the very best where you can, where your feet are that day, and whatever your role is that day, and do it because you love it, and good things will happen for you. That's been my biggest focus. I heard that years ago, and I really took that to heart, and that's what I've always tried to do.
And the final one for me, and I'm asking all the guests this, I'm curious, when a sport kind of envelops your life, was there a pinpoint moment when you said, okay, this is what I want to do? And that could be something you watched. Like for me, I knew I wanted to work in sports. I'm a Baltimore boy, so 2-1-3-1. And Cal Ripken Jr. was my absolute idol. I tried not to miss school because I wanted to be like Cal. Great example setter that guy was. So I'm curious, from your perspective, is it, a time you hit a game-winning double? Is it a time you watched Dale Murphy beat out, a throw from first to third? What was that moment where Monte Lee said, you know what? Not only do I love sports, I love baseball in particular, and that's what I want to go do?
What a great question. This is an honest to God truth moment. It was in 1993. My high school baseball coach would take our whole team by van. We would load up the vans, and every year we would go to Columbia, because living in Lugoff's only about 30 minutes from Columbia. We would take the team every year to watch Clemson and South Carolina play a midweek baseball game. Okay. And Jason Dawsey was pitching for Clemson. Matthew LeCroy hit a home run out of the stadium. I'll never forget that game. Okay. He asked me in the parking lot, we got out of the vans and we were walking together into the stadium. And he asked me, he said, hey, what do you want to do? Have you thought about kind of what you want to do one day as far as your major in college or a career? And that was the first time somebody, a role model, a coach, had asked me that question. And I said, I want to coach. That's just, and I knew right then and there, I can't say that it was a moment or anything like that. I just kind of knew. And I've always tried to follow my gut. And even back then, I can remember being a sophomore in high school. I can remember telling him that was the first moment that it kind of came to me, telling my high school baseball coach that I wanted to be a coach. And I thought it would be a high school baseball coach at the time. And that's when I kind of knew. I started thinking about it early on in high school, I guess. It wasn't like something that I remember that moment when it hit me, but I just remember the moment of telling him that that's what I wanted to do. And I haven't changed since. It's all that I've ever wanted to do. It's all I really know how to do. I would be pretty worthless and doing anything else but coaching baseball, I think, because it's pretty much my heart and soul, and it's all I really know how to do.
Certainly, that's a great story for little twist of fate there that you're back in the dugout at Doug Kingsmore Stadium, and certainly you seem like the right guy for the job. Monte Lee, what do you do when you're not in the dugout? What are you doing these days? What do you do to get your mind off the game? You fishing?
It's a great question. I'm a big outdoorsman. I grew up in a family of outdoorsmen, very blue collar family. All my relatives are big. They like to hunt and fish, and so I enjoy that. I also enjoy mountain biking. Since I've lived in Clemson, we got a lot of mountain bike trails up here, so I'm an avid mountain biker. Like to work out. I'm a big kettlebell guy. I enjoy working out. So working out, mountain biking, hunting and fishing, walking my dogs. I'm a big dog lover. I've got 2 dogs at home, so I spend a lot of time on the leash with my dogs to clear my mind. A lot of those morning and late night walks with my dogs in the neighborhood is when I make decisions on lineups and things like that. I just love being outside. I'm not a big TV guy. I do like Netflix. Netflix has given me an opportunity to watch some TV at night that I wouldn't have normally done in the past. But that's kind of me. I'm a very routine-based guy. So if it's outside, and I pretty much enjoy doing it. So that's kind of me, I guess, in a nutshell.
Best athlete in your family is who?
Me, for sure.
All right, so look, Clemson fans, if you want some input on the day-to-day game preparations, you got to find Coach Lee when he's out walking his dog and just talk his ear off then. That's most susceptible to your advice. All right, Monte Lee, we appreciate the time. Good luck this season. We'll certainly be watching. And here's hoping that is as speed bump free as we could possibly hope for 2021, as thankfully 2020 season is in the rearview mirror. We appreciate you joining us, and thank you for being so candid with all of us.
Hey, thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you having me on.
Head coach Monte Lee, thank you for joining us here for In Depth with Fox Carolina. Another episode coming to you next week. Have a great week.